February 20th, 1945. Over the industrial targets of central Germany, the largest bomber formation in 8th Air Force history was heading toward its target. Escorting the massive fleet of B-17s and B-24s were squadrons of P-51D Mustangs, their silver wings glinting in the thin air at 28,000 feet. Among them was Detroit Miss, a P-51D 20NA flown by Captain James "Jimmy" Morrison, a 23-year-old pilot from Michigan with 47 missions under his belt. The North American P-51D Mustang represented the pinnacle of propeller-driven fighter development, combining American manufacturing excellence with British aeronautical innovation. Measuring 32 feet 3 inches in length with a wingspan of 37 feet and a height of 13 feet 8 inches, the aircraft weighed 7,125 pounds empty and up to 12,100 pounds fully loaded. The D model featured the distinctive bubble canopy that provided 360-degree visibility, eliminating the blind spots that had plagued earlier framed canopy variants. Powered by the legendary Packard V1657 Merlin engine, producing 1,490 horsepower at war emergency power, the Mustang could reach 440 miles per hour at 25,000 feet with a service ceiling of 41,900 feet. The Packard-built engine was essentially a license-produced Rolls-Royce Merlin 66, featuring a two-stage, two-speed supercharger that maintained power at high altitudes. This power plant consumed 70 gallons per hour at combat power, but could be throttled back to 45 gallons per hour for long-range cruise flight. The P-51D's revolutionary laminar-flow wing design, developed through extensive NACA wind tunnel testing, minimized drag by maintaining smooth airflow over 60% of the wing's upper surface. This breakthrough in aerodynamic design provided exceptional fuel efficiency and contributed to the Mustang's superior range capability. The wing's aspect ratio of 5.83 and low-drag airfoil section gave the aircraft excellent high-speed characteristics while maintaining docile handling qualities. With internal fuel capacity of 269 gallons housed in fuselage and wing tanks, plus 2 external 75-gallon drop tanks, the Mustang could fly escort missions deep into Germany and return to bases in England, a range capability that no other Allied fighter possessed. The aircraft's combat radius of 750 miles with drop tanks revolutionized strategic bomber escort tactics, allowing Allied forces to maintain fighter protection throughout entire missions to targets deep in enemy territory. Armed with 6 50-caliber M2 Browning machine guns carrying 1,840 rounds of ammunition, the P-51D could deliver devastating firepower while maintaining its primary role as a long-range escort fighter. Each gun fired at 800 rounds per minute, providing approximately 18 seconds of firing time at maximum rate. The guns were mounted outboard in the wings, with 400 rounds per gun for the 4 outboard weapons and 270 rounds per gun for the 2 inboard weapons. Captain Morrison had learned to fly the hard way, starting with Curtiss P-40 Warhawks in North Africa during the Tunisia campaign before transitioning to Mustangs in early 1944. Born in Detroit, where his father worked on the Ford assembly lines building B-24 Liberators, Jimmy understood mechanical systems instinctively. His aviation training began at Maxwell Field, Alabama, where he earned his wings in Class 43H before assignment to the Mediterranean Theater. Morrison's combat experience included 32 missions in P-40Fs with the 325th Fighter Group over Tunisia and Sicily, where he learned the hard lessons of air-to-air combat against experienced Luftwaffe pilots. His transition to Mustangs came during the build-up for Operation Overlord, when experienced pilots from the Mediterranean Theater were reassigned to England to strengthen the 8th Air Force's growing fighter arm. The 361st Fighter Group had been operational since January 1944, flying bomber escort missions deep into German territory as part of the strategic bombing campaign designed to cripple Nazi war production. Morrison joined the group in March 1944 and quickly established himself as a reliable pilot with exceptional mechanical knowledge and outstanding situational awareness. Morrison's P-51D, serial number 4472847, had been manufactured at North American's Inglewood plant in November 1944 as part of production block 20NA. Detroit Miss bore the distinctive yellow and black checkered nose marking of the 361st Fighter Group's 375th Fighter Squadron, based at RAF Little Walden in Essex. The aircraft featured the standard olive drab and neutral gray camouflage scheme, with invasion stripes hastily painted over after the Normandy landings. The aircraft had accumulated 127 combat hours since arriving in England, with Morrison as her primary pilot for the past 4 months. Detroit Miss had proven exceptionally reliable, suffering only minor maintenance issues typical of combat operations. Morrison had personally supervised much of the maintenance work, applying his mechanical knowledge to ensure optimal performance from his assigned fighter. The mission briefing had been standard: escort the heavies to target, protect them from German fighters, and bring everyone home safely. Intelligence reported diminished Luftwaffe activity, but scattered Me-262 jets and traditional fighters were still active over the target area. The 361st Fighter Group was assigned high cover duty, maintaining altitude advantage, while other P-51 groups provided close escort. At 0847 hours, flying at 28,000 feet, approximately 300 miles east of the Rhine River, Morrison noticed the first signs of trouble. His coolant temperature gauge began climbing above normal operating range, indicating a problem with the liquid cooling system that regulated his Packard Merlin engine. The Mustang's sophisticated cooling system used glycol coolant pumped through radiators mounted beneath the fuselage, with airflow controlled by automatic shutters. "Red Leader, this is Red 3, Morrison radioed to his squadron commander. "I'm showing high coolant temps. May have a cooling system problem." "Roger, Red 3. Can you maintain formation?" Morrison monitored his instruments carefully. Oil temperature was rising steadily, while coolant temperature continued climbing toward the red line. The Packard Merlin was extraordinarily reliable, but cooling system failures could destroy an engine within minutes if not addressed immediately. At 28,000 feet over enemy territory, Morrison faced the classic fighter pilot's dilemma. He could abort the mission and try to nurse the sick engine home, leaving his fellow pilots one fighter short for the mission. Or he could press on and risk total engine failure deep in Germany. His training and 47 previous missions told him to get out while he still had power. "Red Leader, Red 3 is aborting. Engine problems. Heading home." Morrison dropped out of formation and began a gradual descent toward England, still 400 miles to the west. He reduced power settings to minimum cruise, 26 inches of manifold pressure and 2,100 RPM, hoping to reduce the thermal stress on his overheating engine. The Mustang's excellent fuel efficiency at cruise settings meant he could maintain 300 miles per hour while burning only 45 gallons per hour. For 30 minutes, Detroit Miss flew steadily westward as Morrison nursed his ailing engine. Coolant temperature remained dangerously high but stable, while oil temperature fluctuated between normal and elevated readings. Morrison flew at 22,000 feet, balancing altitude advantage against engine stress, while constantly monitoring his engine instruments. At 0925 hours, approximately 250 miles from the nearest Allied airfield, catastrophe struck. Morrison heard the dreaded sound every single engine pilot fears, the sudden silence of a stopped engine. His Packard Merlin seized completely, its pistons frozen solid from coolant loss and overheating. The four-blade Hamilton standard propeller windmilled briefly before Morrison feathered the blades to reduce drag. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Red 3. Engine failure at Angels 22,250 miles east of friendly territory. Going to emergency glide procedures." Morrison immediately configured Detroit Miss for maximum glide performance. The P-51D's exceptional aerodynamic cleanliness became crucial for survival. He adjusted propeller pitch to maximum fine setting, which acted like a constant speed control during the glide. The Mustang's best glide speed was 150 miles per hour indicated airspeed, which provided the optimal lift-to-drag ratio for maximum distance. Unlike most fighters, the P-51 Mustang was an exceptionally efficient glider. Its laminar-flow wing design, originally developed by NACA Research, maintained smooth airflow over the wing surface, significantly reducing drag. The aircraft's glide ratio was approximately 15.1, meaning that for every 1,000 feet of altitude, Morrison could glide 15,000 feet forward, nearly 3 miles. From 22,000 feet altitude, basic mathematics suggested a maximum glide distance of approximately 60 miles under ideal conditions. But Morrison faced a 250-mile journey home, making his situation seemingly impossible. However, the young pilot from Detroit had learned something about P-51 energy management that most pilots never discovered. Morrison began searching for thermals, rising columns of warm air that could provide lift to extend his glide. Flying over the industrial cities of central Germany, he reasoned that the dark surfaces of factory complexes, rail yards, and urban areas would generate thermal activity even in February. By flying in gentle S-turns and feeling for updrafts through his controls, he could potentially extend his glide far beyond normal calculations. The technique required exceptional skill and patience. Morrison would feel the aircraft rise slightly in a thermal, then spiral gently to stay within the lifting air. When the thermal weakened, he would resume his westward glide until finding the next source of lift. It was energy management taken to the absolute extreme, squeezing every possible mile from his silent Mustang. For 2 hours and 15 minutes, Morrison flew westward without engine power. He passed over German cities, railroad marshalling yards, and industrial complexes, each providing precious thermals that extended his impossible glide. The P-51's exceptional low-speed handling allowed him to fly at the edge of the envelope, maximizing lift while maintaining control at speeds barely above stalling. Crossing the Rhine River at 8,000 feet, Morrison realized he might actually reach Allied territory. His dead-stick navigation relied on pilotage and dead reckoning, using rivers, cities, and railroad lines to maintain his westerly heading. The Mustang responded beautifully to his control inputs, despite having no engine power, its control surfaces remaining effective even at low speeds. At 11:45 hours, Morrison spotted the distinctive P-47 Thunderbolts of the 9th Air Force patrolling the front lines. He was over Allied-controlled territory in eastern France, having glided an incredible 400 miles from his engine failure point. But his altitude was down to 3,000 feet, and his options were rapidly diminishing. Any Allied aircraft, this is emergency aircraft requesting assistance. P-51 with engine failure, need vector to nearest friendly airfield. Roger, emergency aircraft. You're over friendly territory. Nearest airfield is A-68 Juvencourt, bearing 270 degrees, 15 miles. Emergency vehicles standing by. Morrison lined up for what would become one of the most remarkable dead-stick landings of the war. Advanced Landing Ground A-68 was a rough fighter strip carved from French farmland, but it represented salvation after his 400-mile glide. He configured Detroit Miss for landing, gear down, flaps 20 degrees, maintaining 120 miles per hour on final approach. The landing was nearly perfect. Morrison touched down on the steel matting runway with barely a bounce, rolling to a stop as ground crews raced toward the silent Mustang. Engine teardown later revealed complete seizure from coolant loss, confirming that Morrison had indeed flown 400 miles without any power at all. The impossible glide became legendary within the 8th Air Force. Morrison's feat demonstrated both the exceptional gliding characteristics of the P-51D Mustang and the skill required to maximize its performance under emergency conditions. His use of thermals and energy management techniques became required study for other fighter pilots facing similar emergencies. Morrison's survival also highlighted the Mustang's forgiving flight characteristics and excellent low-speed handling. While other fighters might have stalled and spun during such an extended glide, the P-51D's laminar flow wing and balanced controls allowed precise energy management even at the edge of the flight envelope. The technical achievement was remarkable. A typical P-51D glide from 22,000 feet should have provided approximately 60 miles maximum range. Morrison's 400-mile achievement represented a six-fold improvement through thermal soaring and exceptional pilot skill. His improvised soaring techniques anticipated post-war developments in sailplane technology. Morrison completed his tour of duty and returned to Detroit, where he worked as a test pilot for North American Aviation after the war. He never forgot the lesson learned during his 400-mile glide, that the P-51 Mustang was far more than just a fighter. In the right hands, it was an exceptionally capable aircraft that could accomplish the seemingly impossible. Detroit Miss was repaired with a replacement engine and returned to combat duty. The aircraft survived the war and was later sold as surplus to civilian buyers. Morrison's impossible glide became part of Mustang folklore, inspiring countless pilots to study energy management and emergency procedures. The P-51D Mustang's reputation as an exceptional aircraft extended far beyond its combat achievements. Morrison's 400-mile dead-stick flight demonstrated that good design, exceptional engineering, and skilled piloting could overcome seemingly impossible odds. Sometimes survival depends not on engine power, but on understanding the fundamental principles of flight and having the skill to apply them when everything else has failed. In an age of jet aircraft and modern technology, Morrison's feat serves as a reminder of what was possible with the finest piston engine fighter ever built. The P-51 Mustang earned its place in aviation history not just for its combat record, but for its exceptional flying characteristics that allowed pilots like Jimmy Morrison to achieve the impossible and live to tell about it.